3, 2, 1. We are now streaming live. This is Franz Borghardt from Geaux Rouge with a sit down with BRAC. Tuesday afternoons at 2, we are going to endeavor to speak to one of the many talented staff members from BRAC to get updates on what's going on with COVID-19. This week, we have Liz Smith. Hey, Liz, what's going on?
Hey, Franz, how are you?
Not too shabby. Now, Liz, you're kind of a VIP over there at BRAC, right?
That's kind of you to say, Franz.
That very kind of me to say. So what is your official title?
I'm the Senior Vice President for Economic Competitiveness, which is overwhelmingly long and really means I run the policy research and advocacy team.
Okay. I mean, that's important. That's not an unimportant title. I'm glad
no.
you broke it down for me. So we have you on here today in part to catch us up a little bit about what's been going on since last time we talked to Adam Knapp, which was last week.
Yeah.
On all the things, all the resources that BRAC is offering. So if you just want to jump in, I got a very lengthy email from Liz, guys, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. I think you probably should start with the dashboard because it's very, very cool.
Thank you. Yeah. So let me start with the dashboard. The dashboard actually was released just about 2 hours ago. And this is a thing that we are trying to do to wrap our arms around what the economy looks like right now. So, one of the things that we noticed going into our response and recovery around COVID-19 is that nobody really has a sense of what is the quantitative data telling us outside of infection rate and things like that. We're very closely monitoring, what's going on with the virus, but what's going on with this huge impact that it's having on our economy. And so we wanted to pull together leading indicators, something that's going to tell us on a week-to-week basis, what is our economy looking like as we are trying to survive the economic impact here. And so we've now had 3 in a row of these leading indicator dashboards. They come out every Tuesday around noon, but before 2 o'clock. And I'd say that, if there are some highlights from this week's dashboard, let me go through a few things. So the economy is obviously and definitely still grappling with the dramatic shift that has happened a month ago when that shelter in place order was given. But the data has actually shown us that Capital Region residents have largely respected the order. And of course, the impact of that is really being felt in new ways, right? So we've seen revenues just being absolutely decimated for restaurants, bars, hotels, and other businesses. And that is leading to more and more layoffs. What we do expect is that in the coming weeks, you can look for a decrease in the number of initial unemployment claims. We suspect that will show that there is a slowing, but also shuttering of businesses will have at that point plateaued. So we're going to be looking for that coming forward.
So I'm going to follow up on that last statement just because I want you to elaborate just a little bit more. Again, lower unemployment claims. Explain that a little bit better for some of the people listening out there, because I think that's very important.
Well, so the unemployment claims information is really scary, Franz. So what we're looking at, we've looked at these past 3 weeks of data and we've compared them year over year, or we've compared them rather to the same weeks last year. And what we saw is that from the first week of March and the first week of April, initial unemployment claims here in the Capital Region went up by 7,300%. And here in East Baton Rouge Parish, those claims rose by over 10,000 claims total, representing a 7,500% increase. Our neighbors across the river in West Baton Rouge saw more than a 14,000% increase in initial unemployment claims, right? So I think we've all known instinctively these unemployment claims, they're huge. There are so many of them. We're seeing that across the United States. But now we know what it looks like. What we do anticipate is this has been going on now for a month. We think we may have hit a peak with the unemployment claims going up as much as they have, with the federal government provisions that are providing a supplement to unemployment insurance. And so what we anticipate is that over the next couple of weeks, those unemployment claims should steady rather than continue their rather striking climb.
Well, and I would imagine that the PPP and the SBA loans, as they become dispersed on whatever timetable that is, and I'm going to ask you about that.
Sure.
I would imagine that money, if you, especially if you want it to be refunded or
Mhm.
forgiven, is going to be utilized for employment
Yeah.
and employees. So that's a nice transition, if I do say so myself, into PPP and SBA loans. What's going on with those? I know many business individuals, entrepreneurs like myself, we applied last week and we're just kind of in a holding pattern waiting. I haven't, no one from the bank has told me they need supplemental materials, which is nice.
Yeah.
I filled out the application or 3 different iterations of the application up until the point that it was finalized. So if you can talk a little bit about what you know about what's going on with the small business SBA loans as well as the PPP.
Yeah, so the PPP is an SBA loan. So let me start with that right off the bat. And I say that just to make sure, because we have had some questions from folks who have found that a little bit confusing. But the PPP is being administered through the Small Business Administration. And right now, it's been open and available for about 2 weeks. We have been told that the burn rate on the PPP is about $30 billion a day. Obviously, quite a bit of money. And so there's, $349 billion that have been put to the PPP at this point. And
Okay.
as of the opening of business this morning, 242 billion in approved loans had already been accessed by 1 million businesses across the United States.
So we are seeing disbursements at this point.
So those are loans that have been approved, but yes, we are seeing disbursements. I will say I have talked to several business owners this week who have already received their PPP money. I mean,
Good.
that's the benefit of the PPP rather than a loan that is solely administered by the Small Business Administration. When you're going to the government and asking the government to go ahead and make those loans, it takes 30 days or so. But being able to use private local lenders, that speeds up that process.
So are there other SBA loan opportunities for businesses outside of the SBA? I call it a PPP instead of an SBA, just so I keep myself
Sure,
kind of
yeah.
separated.
Yeah.
But there are other SBA loan opportunities for businesses, correct?
There are, the PPP is probably going to be the one that most people are going to access. So the other primary SBA loan is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. We call it the EIDL because where I work, we're all about acronyms. And so that EIDL loan, is, it's a smaller amount, right? The PPP is for $10 million. The EIDL is for $2 million. The PPP is forgivable if you spend it on payroll and related expenses, if you spend it on mortgage, rent, utilities, things like that. The EIDL loan is not forgivable. The EIDL loan does come with an advance that is essentially a grant, but that advance is up to $10,000 and it's based on your payroll count. Right. So there are some differences in those two loans. The PPP is probably going to be the one that most people are going after because the loan forgiveness is obviously so attractive, right? The interest rate is lower on the PPP as well. So even if you don't get forgiveness, you have to spend it on something that's not one of those eligible expenses. The interest rate is 1%. As opposed to an EIDL loan, which is 3.75% for businesses.
It's a no-brainer. It's a
right.
no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. The other thing that makes it a no-brainer is that we have actually heard that while the EIDL loan is supposed to be capped at $2 million, what we are being told by our congressional delegation and by folks at the state level here in Louisiana is that they're running out of money. And so while it should be for a $2 million cap, most of the loans are only being approved for $25,000. $25,000, $15,000. And so if you really need that higher number, you got to go for the PPP.
Good deal. Let's transition. I'm looking at one of the resources on your page and it looks beautiful to me. 5 tips for small businesses.
Sure.
You got a second to talk about that?
Yeah. What we've been trying to do is break down as much as possible all of the information that is out there that we can make just as clear as possible to folks. Everybody is struggling right now. Everybody is dealing with a million things all at once. And so what we've been trying to do is just make things very accessible. So those 5 tips for small businesses were something we put out, gosh, it feels like forever ago, but COVID time is just so fast.
March 30th.
March 30th, right? So only 2 weeks ago. But the 5 tips are, first, find out if you have to be closed. Right. There's been a little bit of confusion around the stay-at-home order and what is an essential business and what is not an essential business. And there's different protocols for what businesses have to do if they're essential or non-essential, and how they interact with customers and the public. And so we're encouraging folks, look, if you have a question about whether or not you're essential, you don't know, and you'd like to remain open, you feel like you could do it safely, then contact the Louisiana Department of Economic Development. They have a hotline. It's 833-457-0531. You can also email ledbiz@la.gov and just find out, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is call your bank and ask for advice. You know, a lot of the banks out there are offering some kind of COVID package, if you will. And so they've got special rates that they're offering, and other opportunities to help small business owners. So we're saying, you know, it's worth the phone call to call your lender and just find out if they can help you. The other thing that we ask folks to do is to call their landlord or their mortgage bank and see if there's any temporary relief from owing rent or mortgage payments. What we've seen is that most banks, most credit unions are offering some kind of relief, and it's worth it to go ahead and do the same thing for your other creditors, right? Then we talk a lot about these SBA loans. So the PPP and the EIDL loan and the EIDL grant, the $10,000 or up to $10,000 advance. And then the fifth thing that we tell folks to do is, look, if you are in a position where you have had to lay somebody off or you've had to furlough somebody, then try to give them some information about unemployment insurance. Send them over to louisianaworks.net, which is where they can apply for unemployment insurance. I would say we talked to Representative Garrett Graves this morning, and he let us know that the Louisiana Workforce Commission is encouraging people to fill out their application between the hours of 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. because they are so overloaded right now that the site will work the best at those times. But go ahead and give them information about unemployment insurance. And then look to access that PPP loan if it makes sense for your business, because that will help you to either rehire the folks that you had to furlough or lay off, or if you still have them, keep them.
So it's important to emphasize that one of the reasons we keep using the word forgiveness is the loan is contingent on certain factors. You using the money for certain things, and to some degree. Now, I'm a criminal defense attorney, not a economics expert or guru. Part of this is meant to stimulate the economy. Yeah. So, for example, one of the forgiveness criteria is payroll, and that is employees. So if you're a business owner and you're getting this PPP in, then is the time to rehire, correct? Or at least start gradually having people come back in.
Yeah, so there are actually provisions in the PPP that require you to rehire, as you note, in order to access the forgiveness. So I want to agree with you and say that, yes, this is about stimulating the economy, but I think it's actually more of a lifeboat. It's really just keeping the economy up, right? Keeping our heads above water. And so in order to get that forgiveness, you have to maintain the same head count, and your payroll costs have to, they cannot go down by more than 25%. So that doesn't mean that, for instance, like I had to furlough John Smith and I go to call John Smith and say, hey, I want to offer you your job back. And John Smith says, no, I got another job. No, thanks. I just have to have the same head count. It doesn't have to be the exact same people, right? So that's important to know. But you do have to rehire every position. and you have to keep that payroll at least, it cannot go down by more than 25% in order to access the forgiveness. The other thing that they have said, and this was not in the legislation, but it came from the rules that the SBA put together, is that they're going to cap forgiveness at 25% of the whole forgiveness amount for anything that is not payroll and related expenses. So for instance, if you're using your PPP to pay your mortgage, or you're using your PPP to pay your utility bill, things like that, that has to be 25% or less of your total forgiveness amount, right? So it really is designed to be spent on people.
Is there any other caps on the PPP, particularly in regards to payroll? Is there any caps on payroll with PPP?
So there is a cap on per employee payments. So each employee that you are receiving forgiveness for can essentially, there's a $100,000 cap, right, per employee. And I would imagine that, there's not too many businesses that are going to be in that position, but because, and I say that because you have to, the amount that you can have forgiven is based on 8 weeks of spending. So once your bank approves you for the PPP, they are required to give you your first draw on that money within 10 days. And once you get that first draw, you have an 8-week clock that starts to count. And so the expenditures that you make during that 8-week clock that are eligible for forgiveness, those are the ones that are going to be forgiven. Once that 8-week clock has run out, then it's no longer forgivable, right? So that's why it's got that $100,000 cap, and that's in an 8-week time period,
So I fall into the boat as a law firm. I am a very small business. I'm an S corp
Sure.
with only one employee.
Uh-huh.
So I'm in that weird boat of I'm doing okay right now. I've applied for the PPP. I've talked to Adam about this, and it made sense. I've applied for it because I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The court system in my field, the court system is temporarily shut down
Yep.
at least until April 30th, if not longer. So forecasting is a very, very problematic thing for me right now. So even if you don't necessarily think you need the PPP, I've advised clients, it's a lot easier to give that money back if you don't spend it than if you really need it later and you didn't apply for it and you can't get it. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no penalty for prepayment. So if you
Right.
don't use it, you want to give it back. It's a 1% interest rate. Having that liquidity there is maybe worth the 1% interest rate.
Right.
So certainly a decision each business needs to make for themselves, but I can see the upside.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about loans. We've talked a little bit about some great tips from small businesses. What other resources can one go to the BRAC website for that we haven't talked about yet that we probably should touch on?
Oh my goodness, the list is so long, Franz. So
I knew you were going to say that.
So right off the bat, look, and when you get to the very top of our recovery page, and that's www.brac.org/recovery, when you get to the top of our recovery page, you'll see that there's a business survey there. And so the first thing is, if you can take a moment to fill out that business survey, that is helping us to understand the direct impact on businesses, which is in turn helping us to advocate on your behalf, right? So we are able to be in touch with congressional delegation. We're able to be in touch with the governor's office. We're in touch with folks at the statewide level, with legislators, et cetera. And so we want to be able to share with them your pain points and how you are faring during this time. So I would say stop there at the survey, take a few minutes. I think it's like 10 questions. But after that, you see that we start offering resources. And so the first thing at the top of the page, we have webinars. We had one this morning with Congressman Garrett Graves. He spent an hour answering questions about the PPP, about what future legislation might look like, about what recovery of the economy looks like. We've been lucky to have Senator Cassidy join us as well. We've had several of the big law firms in town come in and talk about things like, what does it look like what for rent issues, right? or even just to talk about the CARES Act. We had somebody come in and talk about managing remote teams. So lots of webinars. We have at least 3 a week. And we are doing our very best to make sure that at least one of those every week are focused on the CARES Act and focused on the PPP, because people still have a lot of questions, and we
So
anticipate that that will continue.
I'm going to ask a question I already know the answer to. These webinars, are they free or do they cost money to attend?
They are free. Look, BRAC right now is very focused on getting out resources to the business community, and that's that. So you don't have to be an investor in BRAC to access the webinars, and it's absolutely free. Now, there is one thing that is not free, and that is we are doing a weekly Ask Me Anything with Adam Knapp. And that is for investors only on Thursday mornings. But other than that, all of the resources that we are providing on our recovery page are free to the community.
Good deal. All right. So we've covered a lot of topics. We've got a few minutes left. I'm being rude. I'm looking to see if there's any questions. And the only statement that I'm seeing or question oriented towards you, Liz, is your good friend commenting on how great your blue looks. But that's your friend Kelly.
Well, thank you,
and then
Kelly.
of course, Yuvia agrees with her. So guys, if you guys have any questions, put it in the comments thread of the post. I'll get Liz to kind of keep an eye on it after we're done today, just in case there's something that she can't answer. If we cannot answer it directly, I will work towards getting that.
You bet.
So let's talk a little bit about one of the things that came up was there are certain businesses that may not be eligible for the CARE Act. And I have a lot of friends that are in the restaurant industry that were expressing concerns about that. Are there restaurants that are eligible for the CARE Act? Are they not? And then the other question I got messaged privately was about bars and bars that have been shut down during the stay-home order.
So I have not seen anything that would bar either a bar or a restaurant from eligibility for CARES. There have been some questions around affiliation rules. And so the affiliation rules are, if you have to be a small business, so you have to be under 500 employees, which is sort of a high level rule for the CARES Act for the PPP, but not always correct across the board. But if you have to have 500 or fewer employees, people have been asking, well, what if I work for a chain of restaurants? And so I'm part of a franchise, right? And the SBA has addressed that issue in what they're calling affiliation rules and has waived some of those affiliation rules. But our local bars and restaurants, there shouldn't be any eligibility impediment for any of them to apply for the PPP.
So the question I got asked was specifically about, would there be an obstacle? And again, I think I know the answers, but I'm smart enough to know that I don't know everything. Is there an obstacle to a bar that cannot operate right now because it doesn't fit into the exception of staying open and takeout? Can a bar still apply and get PPP? And my answer was, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to. If and none of us know the answer to this, but if the stay-at-home order is lifted on May 1 or May 15, your operations can go, assuming that there's no restrictions on that reopening, your operations are going to start, and there's no window of when you have to start using your PPP. So I told them to apply. Again, there's no obstacles that I read. So, all right. So we've talked about that. What else before we go do we need to talk about, Liz? And by the way, Liz Smith with BRAC, thank you so much for making time with us.
I'm so glad to be here.
Listen, normally I had to talk to Adam about doing it every week, but you are so much more interesting. I'm kidding. We are happy to have anybody from y'all's organization. I'm paying attention to what you're doing, and you are actively helping. So it really does provide me a lot of warm and fuzzies that you're able to do all the stuff you're able to do. And again, with the exception of a few things, it's all free. So anything else we need to talk about before I let you get back to your busy day?
I'm just going to push again that recovery page, brac.org/recovery. In addition to the webinars, we've got links to all of the legislative activity that's been taking place. We have tried, as with those 5 tips for small businesses, to boil things down into actionable steps you need to take. So every time we get a big 800-page piece of legislation, we try to boil it down to a page, to a chart, to a graph, right? So all of that information is there. Other resources that are outside of BRAC are there. Our analysis of things that are going on are there. And then one more big thing, BR Works. So we have worked to very quickly set up a job board that provides not only information about jobs that are available in the capital region for those who may have been furloughed or laid off, but also works as a matchmaker between companies that are laying off and furloughing and companies that are looking to hire. And so our talent development director, Maggie Spurlock, has been operating that on the back end to bring those HR managers together so that we can transition people from one company to another as quickly as possible. And that's a huge resource for the community. We found over 200 open jobs that are posted on that site. We're updating it daily with new jobs. So if you are an employer and you are either looking to hire or you are in that position of having to furlough or lay off, please do visit our BR Works page on the recovery page. And if you're an individual out there who's looking for another role, go ahead and peruse that as well. We hope that that's helpful for the community.
So if you're coming in late to this webinar or live stream, whatever you want to call it, I would encourage you after we stop to watch from the beginning. We've talked about a lot of stuff. We've talked about loans. We've answered some questions that are probably common questions. The best piece of advice I've heard today, and it's the thing I've been telling a lot of my business clients, is communicate. Whether it's with your bank, whether it's with your lessor, whether it's with your mortgage holder, communicate. Don't just ninja out and assume that everything's going to be fine. Communicating often helps. Everybody kind of understands what's going on right now. So, there may be solutions that you don't even know about just by reaching out and asking questions. So Liz, thank you. We'll try to have you back on again. God knows you may be on next week again. So, but we plan to do this every week as long as BRAC can to give resources. We know you're also helping out 107.3. So we definitely thank BRAC and Liz for making time. Guys from the Geaux Rouge family, y'all have a great day. And if you have questions that we didn't get to, don't hesitate to comment on the thread, and I'll get Liz to look at it occasionally to see if she can answer it. You guys have a great day.
Thanks, Franz.